Sorry about that. So I spoke to this mother. She has a son who has a family of his own, and he's going through a crisis now. And of course, she's doing what mothers do when their children go through crises. She's questioning everything she ever did in her life that might have affected him negatively. And she's wondering, was I mechanech him properly? Did I give him what he needed? Was this something I didn't notice? And she's asking herself these questions. And we go through times like that, We see things sometimes on our children. As you get older, this happens. You see things on your children, and you're like, I don't like that. Oh, I do that. Right? We start seeing ourselves, I am my mother after all, We start seeing ourselves in our children. And not only the things we like about ourselves, but maybe the things that we wish we didn't have. And that becomes complex for us. And we can go through life really, really dealing with the burden of lost opportunities. There's also a sense sometimes, this is something that I've struggled with, I don't know if any of you have, that I feel like sometimes I mature or get the proper perspective about things too late. Like if only I had this knowledge or this perspective or this wisdom as I get older, when I was younger, I would have made such different choices. I'm sure that I'm not the only one that would say that, we calm down a bit as we get older. We're very fired up when we're younger, right? We mellow a little bit. When I was younger, I would be like, older people mellow. I hope that never happens to me. Now, Baruch Hashem, it happened to me, But there is a sense of regret, and living with regret is one of the hazards of maturing, is that there are things that we wish we would have done differently. With things we wish we would have realized, things we wish we would have done, things we wish we would have not done. And I think that sometimes those things, whether we realize it or not, they torture us to the point that they get in the way of doing what we need to do today. Because we still have a life, kol zman sheha neshama b'kirbi. As long as there's a neshama inside me, I have the ability and the zechus and the responsibility to do today right, despite the fact that I made so many mistakes, perhaps, in the past. But there's a depth to it, and you'll see where I'm coming from in the parsha in a moment. There's a depth to it, and that is, I don't know if I'm the only one around the table that feels this way, that if I had made different decisions when I was younger, or not made certain decisions that I made when I was younger, perhaps the very things that I'm dealing with now, or struggling with now, or trying to handle now, I wouldn't have had to deal with at all. So, in other words, I set this table with the mistakes of the past. So now I'm at whatever stage of life I'm in, and it's not a question of just walking around with the regrets of the past. If you know how life works, the regrets of the past, they don't stay in the past. They come with us. Relationships ruined, opportunities lost, bridges burned. They affect us today. And that's something that sometimes we're saddled with. And I want to point out an idea in the parsha and a perspective to try to help make us a little lighter and be able to have a little bit of a brighter view of the present, even with possible regrets in the past. That's my goal for tonight. Good luck, you're saying.
You can send us a bill.
So the beginning of Parshas Vayakel. Think about this. Tell me if you've ever thought about this before. The beginning of Parshas Vayakel, Moshe Rabbeinu gathers Klal Yisrael together to tell them to build the Mishkan. When was this? When did this take place? So Rashi says, and we can make I'll map it out for you exactly. Rashi says that it was the day after Yom Kippur. Now, it wasn't Stam, the day after Yom Kippur, a random day that Moshe Rabbeinu decided to teach them to build this edifice called the Mishkan. It was very specific, this Yom Kippur, because what happened was, let's follow through, okay? You have to know the Jewish months for this, but I'll try to say the numbers of the months as well, in case you don't, okay? So, in Nisan, they came out of Mitzrayim, okay? Month number 1, they came out of Mitzrayim. And then 49 days later, they stood at the bottom of Har Sinai and they received the Torah. That was in Sivan, month number 3. Okay? And the day after they received the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu climbed up on Har Sinai and spent 40 days and 40 nights there receiving the Torah, only to come down with the luchos in his hands. He came down with the luchos in his hands. Now, the luchos that he was carrying was the first set of luchos, the first tablets, and they were miraculous and special, and Klal Yisrael at that point would have been catapulted into an entirely new plane of existence by receiving those luchos. It was a different world. There would have never been no forgetting. There would have been no dying. We're talking about a different plane of existence. But it was a very fateful day, the day Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the luchos. It was the 17th day of Tammuz, month number 5. And Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, month number 4. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down from the mountain, and he finds an Egel Hazav, a golden calf, prancing around. And he does something that's a very, 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 very scary move, but Hashem eventually thanked him for it. He smashes the luchos. The letters, the holy letters of the luchos, float back up to Shemayim. These broken stones are on the foot of the mountain. Moshe Rabbeinu takes the Egel and destroys it. There's a war that goes on, destroying the people that rebelled against Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu restores Klal Yisrael, and it's not easy for him, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to wipe out the whole nation. And Moshe Rabbeinu, always our protector, he advocates for us fiercely. He fiercely advocates for us. Im ayin mecheni na me sifrecha asher kasavta, right? If you're not going to accept the tshuva of Klal Yisrael, erase me from the Sefer Torah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepts, and Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to acquire, to daven for Klal Yisrael for 40 days and 40 nights. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up on the 18th day of Tammuz, which is month number 4, and he comes down on the day before Rosh Chodesh Nisan at the very, very end of month number 5, 40 days later. Then on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Moshe Rabbeinu goes up with Elul, I'm sorry, Elul. Then on the morning of Rosh Chodesh Elul, Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to receive, that's Elul is month number 6. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up in the morning of Rosh Chodesh Elul to receive the second luchos. Klal Yisrael is on a much lower level today than they were when they stood by Har Sinai. There would be an argument to be made that they were broken. Their luchos, the great luchos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu carved, the first luchos were not carved by Moshe. They were not carved out of the rock of the mountain by Moshe. They were carved by HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. The second luchos were brought up by Moshe. Hashem wrote the words on them, but they were brought up by Moshe. They were the second luchos are a much, much, much different world, the world that we live in today. The world of Achar HaChet, a world of confusion, a world of Yetzer Hara, and significantly, a world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't rest his Shekhinah directly on us. We're not worthy. We have to build a Mishkan for Hashem to rest his Shekhinah on. How sad is that? Hashem was ready to rest his Shekhinah on us. but we messed up. We made a mistake. And there's no turning back now. And the entire course of history has been changed. And we're now dealing with a new reality, a much more diminished reality. As Moshe Rabbeinu goes up on that Rosh Chodesh Elul, he comes down 40 days later on Yom Kippur, the 10th day of Tishrei, month number 7. And when he finally brings the Luchais down on Yom Kippur, the next day he gathers Klal Yisrael together and he tells them to build a Mishkan. And if it was me, I would be standing there. I'm getting emotional just talking about it. I would be standing there by the foot of the mountain as Moshe Rabbeinu was giving us instructions to build a Mishkan, and I would be crying and feeling helpless and hopeless and ruined. I messed it all up. It's a mess now. Now we have to build a Mishkan. Did Klal Yisrael react that way? Absolutely not. Klal Yisrael enthusiastically embraced the mission of the Mishkan. They brought so much donations to the Mishkan to show their enthusiasm for this project of building the Mishkan that for the first and only time in the history of the world, they had to send out a message to please stop giving donations. Have you ever heard of that happen? That was the enthusiasm and the joy. And with tremendous simcha, they built the Mishkan. And I was very intrigued when I was thinking about that. Because I started this shiur by talking about the regrets that we have. Can you imagine as a nation the possible level of regret, of hopelessness, of like is it even worth it now? Such an unbelievable mistake. I can't even deal with the level of a mistake. Boy, did I mess up. We, as a nation, mess up. That last day before Moshe Rabbeinu was going to come down, we built that Egel. What were we thinking? We ruined everything. But we did not react that way. And despite the fact, wouldn't you have been understanding of someone feeling that way? And despite that fact, we stood there proudly and we embraced this mitzvah of building a Mishkan. And I want to explain how that can be. Where does a person get the strength to embrace a world after so much regret and after the course of their lives have been altered by the thing that they're regretting? Where does that strength come from? So, I want to describe something about Teshuvah that Reb Tzadok HaKohen Melublin writes in very short, and I want to explain it because it's the key not only to understanding something important about Teshuvah, but it's a key to understanding something important about a way that we could live our lives looking towards the future instead of regretting the past. And that would be awesome if we could do that. It would make us a little lighter and a little more joyful and a little more purposeful as we head into the future. The Sfarim tell us that there's a contradiction. The way the Sfarim put it is that there's a contradiction between Bechira and Yediyah. Now, I'm not going to, that would be an hour-long philosophical class to go into all the details of that, but let me just give a brief synopsis of what that means. The Sfarim say that there's a contradiction between the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what we're going to do and the fact that we have free choice. Many people struggle to understand what the problem is, right? I come home and I let's say I'll come home and I'll offer my wife, you have two choices. I bought you two treats. Which one do you want? I bought you a tomato. I bought you a chocolate cheesecake with caramel dripping down the sides. Mm-hmm. And it's your choice. Now, do I know which choice my wife is going to make? Mm-hmm. I absolutely do. Mm-hmm. In fact, even if she tells me she's going to choose the tomato, I know that when I come back, she's going to be eating the cheesecake. Okay? I know that with absolute certainty. Okay? Does that mean she doesn't have a choice? She has a choice, but I know what choice she's going to make. Okay, I guess there are those that would argue she doesn't have a choice, but there's such a thing as knowing the choice that someone's going to make. It doesn't mean they don't have a choice, We've dealt with shidduchim, sometimes you realize at a certain point that your child is about to make a certain choice. Do they have bechira? Yes. Do you know what choice they're going to make? Yes. It's not a contradiction. But that's because people don't understand the contradiction. The real essence of the contradiction is not just that Hashem knows what you're going to do, but that Hashem needs you to do it. And I'm going to give you a dramatic example based on the story of Purim. Okay? Haman made a bad choice. Could we agree on that? Mm-hmm. Okay? Lahashmid, laharoig, ula'abei, eskol hayehudim, minar va'ad zakein, taf v'nashim, b'yoim echad. Okay? Bad choice. Okay? To destroy the Jewish people. Did Haman have a choice?
Yes.
Absolutely, Haman had a choice. Okay. Was it Hashem's plan that we should have the Yontif of Purim? Mm-hmm. That we should accept the Torah again? That we should have this unbelievably powerful day? Was it Hashem's plan? Yes. But it can't happen if Haman doesn't try to destroy us. We would never become the people we were meant to be. We would never experience the aliyah, the growth that we experienced, that Hashem gave us, had Haman not done that. So did Haman have to do that? Yes. Did Haman have a choice? Yes. That's the contradiction. You getting the contradiction? You never got it that clear before, right? That's a way of describing the contradiction, where on one plane of existence, of course, a person has a choice. But it's not just that Hashem knows what you're going to do. The history of the world absolutely depends on the fact that you're going to do that. Okay? Let me give you another example on the good side. Okay? Just so that we should have even more clarity, if you can imagine that. Okay?
We're getting clarity on the contradiction?
Yes. We want to have the kasha. Okay? If you are stuck and mystified, you're exactly where you need to be. Because there is no answer to that. That's something only Hashem understands. Okay? But let's say, chas v'shalom, there's a little boy in a room, and the little boy starts to choke. And there's no time for Hatzalah to get there. But there's one Hatzalah member in the building. And he rushes to the boy, and he saves his life. That's why we love Hatzalah. Okay? And he saves the boy's life. And that boy grows up to be a great Rosh Hashiva who influences the lives of hundreds of thousands. Did that Hatzalah member have a choice? He had a choice. But did he really have a choice? Did Hashem want that boy to grow up and become a big Rosh Hashiva? Yes. So and we don't need to understand the answer. Don't lose sleep over this, okay? When it's time to go to sleep, okay? Because the Rishonim tell us, because our Rabbeim have taught us, that this contradiction is a contradiction that human beings were not designed to understand. It is a reality of our life, that on one level, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows everything and has a plan of exactly what everyone is going to do. And on another level, every one of us has free choice. And not only that, but we live in a world of free choice. Could you imagine if, let's say it's Shabbos, okay? And I left the light in my room on. So that's very big nisayon, I want to go to sleep, and the light is on. So I tell myself, I don't think I have a choice. Mm-hmm. I'm going to turn off the light. And I turn off the light, and I go, apparently I didn't have a choice. The light was supposed to be off. Okay, are we allowed to make that cheshbon? Of course not. We live in a world of bechira. It is absolutely forbidden for us to enter that other world, that Hashem needs that to happen. Absolutely forbidden. We treat everything in our life as if we are full of choices. These are our choices. And right now, in fact, all of you, whether you're on the Zoom or you're here, all of you made a choice to be here tonight. No, you didn't really have a choice, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted you here. Because perhaps this share will inspire you, or make you happy, or give you confidence, and Hashem wanted you to have that. That was the Gzeirah. Because perhaps your families, or friends, or things, maybe there's a ripple effect here. Who knows? Who knows what could happen from this share? You had no choice, but that's not. When you were deciding whether or not you're going to come to the share, and you were saying what I know you were saying, which is, I'm so tired, should I go? When you were doing that, when you were making that choice, you made a choice. Not only did you make a choice, but Achar Mea Ve'esrim, when you go up to Shamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reward you for that choice. And not only is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to reward you for that choice, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reward you in ways that will absolutely blow your mind from the greatness of the reward of sitting and listening to Divrei Torah. Because you do have a choice. That's how we get rewarded for doing the right thing. If we didn't have a choice, there will be nothing to reward us for. There's no choice. When my computer prints what I tell it to print, I don't give it a present, because it doesn't have a choice. Okay? But when I do the right thing, I get schar. You know why? Because I have a choice. So you're seeing these two worlds? On one world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a decision. On the other world, it's my choice. Now listen to the incredible, incredible words of Reb Tzadok. Incredible. Reb Tzadok says, what happens if yesterday I did an Aveira? Yesterday I was neglectful, maybe, about something that belonged to somebody else. I did an Aveira. Or I hurt someone's feelings. Or whatever. I did an Aveira. Okay, so of course, any Aveira that involves another person, you have to ask that person for Mechila. Right? That goes without saying. But now, I feel this torture. I did an Aveira yesterday. Did I have a choice? Yeah, I had a choice. And it's not a good thing. And I regret it. I did something really bad. I got upset when I shouldn't have gotten upset. I screamed when I shouldn't have screamed. I put someone down when I shouldn't have put them down. I regret it. Now, is there a way to look at it that I had no choice? Yeah. Also, I had no choice. Because Hashem wanted that person to have the nisayon of being screamed at. Okay? Am I allowed to say, no, I don't have to do tshuva. Hashem wanted the person to be screamed at. You know? Of course, you're not allowed to do that. Right? Because we have a choice. Listen to the incredible Reb Tzadok. He says, let me ask you something. Let's say you do tshuva. Let's say you screamed at someone in the family, okay? It really caused the person a lot of pain. And it happened yesterday. And today you're very, very, very regretful of it. And you do tshuva. You ask mechila. You say vidui. You ask Hashem to forgive you. You make a decision that you're not going to do that again. Tshuva, right? Did you still scream at the person yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, so how'd you get rid of what you did?
You can't.
Says Reb Tzadok, you know what you did? You took it out of your choice. Once you do tshuva, you're saying, I'm taking my choice away from that. That's the chiddush of tshuva, the nace, the miracle of tshuva, that I could say, I'm no longer choosing that. Well, the miracle of tshuva is that we could say it on the past. I'm no longer making that choice. I no longer buy in. I'm no longer subscribing to that. No, I do not have a subscription to that action anymore. But the action is there. What happened to that action? It switches from Bechira to Yediyah. It becomes something that, once I did a full tshuva, now it's not about me anymore. I took the imprint of my action away. Now what's left is that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to happen. Does that make sense? That's the unbelievable power of tshuva. Okay? So I can take my interaction, my choice out of it, and I'm left with, this is what Hashem wanted to happen in the world. Okay. So I developed, when I was younger, 2 policies about Bechira and Yediyah, 2 practical policies that I think I think could be a big chizuk for us. Especially if as you go through life, you feel this mounting pile of regrets. And that is as follows. You ready for the rules? Here are the rules. 2 rules. Okay, 1 rule I'll tell you in the end because it's not so relevant to the point I'm making tonight, but it's important anyway. 2 rules. Rule number 1. Bechira is on the present, Yediyah is on the past. Meaning, I am here because of, as a sum total of all the choices I ever made. For some of us, maybe for many of us, there's a certain ouch factor to that. Because the me being here comes with a lot of positive choices that I have a lot of nachas from, but it also comes from choices that I do not have as much nachas from. But once those choices have receded into the past, and I've done tshuva for the mistakes that I made, if there's things I needed to ask for forgiveness, I did. I went through a Yom Kippur. The way I look at the past is not, I'm going to spend the rest of my life regretting what I did. The way I look at the past is that I accept that this is where Hashem wanted me to be. You'll say, 1 second, but you made that mistake. No, I didn't. If it's a question of right and wrong, I said I'm sorry. If it's a question of something that needs tshuva, I did tshuva. But otherwise, everything that led up to today is all prep. Your life, the life of a person takes place in the present moment. And the way to look at my life is not like, and let me use Klal Yisrael, because that's what we were talking about. Klal Yisrael is standing there, it's after the Egel. They could ruin the next 40 years by spending the entire time crying and moaning and being in regret for the mistakes that they made that led them to have the luchais broken and to have all the tragedy that followed, that all came from this, the Meraglim and Moshe hitting the rock and all of the tragedies that followed. They could have all been avoided had they not done that. But when they stood there that day after Yom Kippur, they said to themselves, everything until today is the lead up to this moment. We did tshuva, which they did. We did tshuva. If we did tshuva, we removed our choice from it. Now I look at the past through the prism of Yediyah, not Bechira. That was where Hashem wanted me. Hashem wanted me to be standing here with the second luchas. Hashem wanted me to build a mishkan. And instead of wasting my time agonizing over mistakes that were what Hashem wanted, because the part that's my bechira I got rid of, I did tshuva. So what I'm left with is this is what Hashem wanted. So why should I torture myself and spend the rest of my life living in the agony of the mistakes that I made? Let me accept that my life was leading up to today. We've said many times in this share that the way to say the day and the way to say today in Lashon HaKodesh are exactly the same. Because today is the day. Because there's nothing in the past that I can change right now. Right now, that's in the level of Yediyah. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. But right now, it's Wednesday night. It's 9:12 p.m. before Parshas Vayakel. It's Adar Tafshin Pei Hey. We're between Purim and Pesach, and we have a moment right now. Let's not lose this moment in the pain of whatever mistakes we've had in the past. Let's recognize that everything we went through, the good choices, Baruch Hashem, we've made good choices as well. The good choices that we've made, the negative choices we've made, the progress that we've had, the progress that we were frustrated that we didn't have, the setbacks that we had, the simchas that we had, the tzaras that we had, all of that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Gzeira. You know what's up to you? What you're going to do on Wednesday night. That's up to you. What you're going to do, you're going to leave this room and you're going to have a moment of choice. Right now you have a moment of choice. Your whole life led up to this moment. And that continues to be true for the rest of our lives. Every day of our lives, that's the day. The past is the past. The mistakes, I started off the shiur, I think before we even turned the recording on, I started the shiur talking about like the fact that sometimes we just wish that we had the wisdom of being older when we were younger. We just wish we had that. If only we had had the perspectives or the things that we learned. Or what about the people that we met that inspired us? And we wish we would have met them a little earlier. And we would have made different decisions or done things differently. Or what about the difficulties that we went through? That had we had certain chizuk, we wouldn't have been so difficult. We could spend our whole lives rehashing that in our minds and feeling the torture of the mistakes that we made. Or we can say, you know something? The past is Yediyah. That was what HaKadosh Baruch, that's Hashem's department, because we can't go back in the past. So the past is Hashem's department. The present, that's mine. The future is also Hashem's department. So,
I just asked me, this is going to get complicated, but let's say you're posher or something.
you can still do tshuva.
I know, but it's, you made a mistake, it's on you.
Right, but once you do tshuva,
Not me.
you are removing that. Even if you're pasheya. Once you do tshuva, it has to be a real tshuva. But once you do tshuva, you are removed. You're saying you're taking the chiddush of tshuva. I can't get into this now. Maybe Rosh Hashanah time we'll get more into this, even though tshuva is relevant the whole year. But the chiddush of tshuva is that you could remove your bechira from the past. So if you were pasheya yesterday, you're like, I can't change the past. Yes, you can. You can't change what happened, but you can change your involvement in what happened. You can take your fingerprints off it. That's what tshuva does. Tshuva takes your fingerprints off it and leaves it with, this is what Hashem wanted. Why did Hashem want this? Add it to the list of all the many things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has done that are beyond our comprehension. And Baruch Hashem, we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. And we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu only wants the best for us. And we also know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very mysterious sometimes. And sometimes we go through difficult times because we know that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. My point tonight is not to be Hashem's lawyer. My point tonight is to understand that I am wasting energy and wasting time by living in the mistakes of the past. Maybe when I was younger, if I would have been a better parent when I was younger, my children would have easier lives now. So maybe I should just spend the rest of my life tortured, because when I see my children struggling with something, if I would have been a little healthier, they wouldn't have struggled with that.
Let's say you didn't do tshuva.
Do tshuva.
I'm saying do tshuva.
Do it right now.
For
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Tshuva, right? When do the gates of tshuva close? Never. Right? You do tshuva right now. So do tshuva. It looks to me like you're like, wow, is this really true? Yeah, this is really true.
Because there's always questions that like you have, but like.
Yeah, get rid of it. Get rid of the averas. Do tshuva. Tshuva's not so hard. I don't like that people make tshuva into something that's impossible. HaKadosh Baruch Hu intended tshuva to be something that we do. We do it every day. You regret what you did. You express what you did to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You make a commitment not to do it again. Tshuva. We have to, it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. That's tshuva. Okay? You want to do tshuva l'mahadrin with all the hechsherim and everything, so learn shari tshuva. But basic tshuva, you can do right now while you're sitting here. Okay? Basic tshuva is something that's accessible to us. It's not helpful for us to believe that tshuva is not accessible to us. We have, and part of our emunah is that we believe in the power of tshuva. And tshuva removes your fingerprints from the past and leaves you with, this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. So imagine that you just open your eyes now, and you just appeared here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created you. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, here's your backstory. You were born here, and you did this, and that, and you made this mistake. This is your backstory. Now, what are you going to do right now? Like an actor on a stage, right? So the actor gets on the stage, and or a film, and the actor has a backstory, right? So now, of course, you don't see the whole backstory, but the actor has to know what his or her backstory is, right? Because that affects how they're going to act. So the actor walks on the stage, and you say, here's your backstory. You're a cowboy, and you have this kind of father, and this kind of mother, and you did this, and this is who you are. Now go do that. Now go take that to the next step. That's how we live every day. We're not actors. But the way we live every day is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the past is my department. Here's your backstory. Now that you have that backstory, let me see what you can do today. What can you turn this backstory into for today? What positive things can you do today with the person that you are, with the kaiches that you have, with the abilities and with the pain that you carry? What can you do with that today? This is important. It's important because we're losing precious energy by beating ourselves up for endless years for the things, for the mistakes that we made, instead of just recognizing them for what they are, which is, they are the parts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into place for today, so that I can have a choice today. Okay, you want to know what the other rule is of Bechira and Yediyah before I end? The other rule is a very delicious rule. Okay? If you follow this rule, I can pretty much promise you a happy life. Okay? I'm listening. Here it is. You ready? The rule is, what I'm about to tell you is a way to think about Bechira and Yediyah that's life-changing. And that is, you have Bechira and everyone else has Yediyah. If you think of your life that I have choices to make, other people, I'm not thinking about the fact that they're Bali Bechira. I don't have to. When someone insults me, I'm going to relate to it as if they didn't have a choice. If someone does something stupid and gets into a fender bender with me, I'm not going to walk around saying, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you? They didn't have a choice. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted that. I'm going to look at everyone else as if they're following the script that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. You know who has a choice in this world? One person. Me. And if you think about it, there's a lot of truth to this. Because each one of us, chayiv adam loymar, a person is obligated to say, bishvili nivra ha'olam, the world was created for me. What does that mean? That means that you are obligated to look at the world, for you, as if the world was created for you. So what am I doing here if the world was created for you? I'm a puppet, exactly. That's exactly right. So do I have Bechira? No. Now, same thing is true for you, by the way, in my life. We are even. But that's, you realize what a happy life that would be? I have a choice. You know, an actress walks onto a stage and the scenery and props, right? She doesn't say, why'd the prop do that? Why is the scenery acting that way? You don't do that. Those are the props and the scenery. Bishvili Nevra Oila means I'm the main actor. Everything else is just supporting actors. You don't have Bechira, just I do. So that's nothing to do with the point that I was making, but I couldn't talk about this idea without, isn't it a chizuk? Think about that.
It is, but like, you know, everyone else still has Bechira. So
But there's an element of Yediyah and an element of Bechira by everyone, right? So all I'm saying is that I'm relating to other people in terms of their Yediyah.
Like as if when
Right.
they do something to you.
I'm not making believe, but I'm relating. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes us do what we do, and we have a choice. Both things are true at the same time. So for myself, my responsibility is to say, I have a choice, and I have to take responsibility for my choices. But when it comes to you, I don't have to worry about the fact that you have a choice. I can just look at the part of you that like, okay, this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. Especially vis-a-vis the way I experience you. You know what I mean? So like, I'm not getting into, you have Bechira and you're Bishvili Nevra Olam, that's not my concern.
You mean like,
You know what I'm saying?
Something to you or whatever.
Right.
You're not.
So like,
Responsible for yourself. Not responsible
so
for
if you have a job and you have an employer, a boss, and your boss is very, very mean or critical or has bad midos or something like that, and it drives you crazy, take it easy. It's a robot. There's no choice. But you know what is a choice? You know what the spotlight is on? The main actor. How am I reacting to that? That's where the choice is. If we look at it that way, it gives us a lot of strength. And it spotlights how chashuv we are. We are the center of our story. We are the main character in our story. And that, I think, is, I think that's gold. I think I should get paid for that one. That's gold, I think. So that's what I came to share with you tonight. Number one, my whole life was leading up to this moment. All the things, the good, the bad, the ugly, the regrets, the good choices I made, the difficult things, it's all leading up to this moment. I'm not going to spend my time regretting the past. The past is past. That's what Hashem wanted. Yediyah, that's what Hashem wanted. But I can live in the moment with my full joy. I could just live in the moment, and I could do today right. I can live today right. We're going to go home tonight, and we are going to have the ability to do the night right. To do what servants of Hashem do. We have that ability. And our whole lives are leading up to this moment. That's the first part. And the second part is, I have Bechira, and everyone else does not. If I look at it that way, and there's truth to that, in the sense of Chayav Adam Loimar B'Shvili Nevra Olam, if I look at it that way, I will spend a lot less time being aggravated about what people do and what people said, and the different, even very bad things that people do. A lot of times we spend time with anger and resentment and all of that, and instead, I can let go of that and just be like, okay, this was the stage Hashem set. Sometimes Hashem sets a pretty dark stage in this gullus of ours. Sometimes we go through difficult things. Baruch Hashem, some of our stages are the most beautiful stages. But sometimes it's difficult things, how could I say a share without mentioning that the war seems to have resumed in Gaza, and we're sitting b'pachad, we have brothers and sisters there, and they're worried. I taught this week in Navi that when Shaul HaMelech became king, so his son Yonasan attacked a troop of Plishtim. And when that happened, Shaul HaMelech sent people to blow shofar all over Eretz Yisrael to make sure that everyone heard about it. And the Mefarshim explained, the Psukim and the Mefarshim explained, that there were Jews that were living in the neighborhoods of the Plishtim. And Shaul knew that if the Plishtim hear that a troop was attacked by Jews, they're going to beat up on the Jews that are around them. And when I read that this Shabbos, my heart was thinking about the hostages. That whenever the Israelis do something, I'm not talking about whether they should or they shouldn't. But nobody asked us. But the fact of the matter is that when those bombs start falling, we think about those people. It's certainly not easy for them, and they must be so afraid. And we think about them. My son in Philly told me that the Rosh Hashiva there speaks constantly about what's going on there since October 7th. Constantly. Kamat doesn't say a shmooze. Even by the Purim Sutta, that's what he was talking about. And he said, and he cries. He cries for them. And it's one of the most beautiful things of our people that the frum world took it upon themselves, from Hasidim to Litvisha, to all parts of Klal Yisrael. We took it upon ourselves to daven 3 times a day for the hostages. After every single minyan in every single shul and yeshiva across the world, they say Tehillim. You know what that means? And you know what happened? The hostages found out about it. And their families know about it. And these are people that are not religious, and they're not affiliated, and maybe they even would have thought that the Rosh Hashiva of Philadelphia doesn't like them. But he's crying every day because he's worried about his brothers and sisters. If that doesn't bring Mashiach, I can't think of anything more powerful. And so as I'm saying, some of the stages set are difficult stages. Today, this week was a darker stage. Our hearts and minds are in Eretz Yisrael. But we have to remember, B'Shvili Nevra Olam, all of that is a backdrop to what I am going to do, how I am going to interact, how I am going to react, how I am going to live my life. And Hashem should give us the strength to be able to let go of the regrets of the past and to fully embrace a vibrant and strong future. And to let go of the resentments of other people. What other people do, they don't have Bechira. And to fully embrace my ability to make choices. And with Hashem's help, we should be Zaycha to the Geula b'Meher of Yomeinu. Yashikaya, thank you.
So how do you translate Lydia?
Can you figure out? Here we go, I'll send it up. Just press. I don't just because I can't get the screen. There you go. That's